We will now hear the opening statement from Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, to be followed by Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro. Sir.
Well, thank you. Let me start by saying what an honour it's been to be here in Manila today, to be with my good friend, the Secretary of National Defence, the Honourable Gilberto Teodoro. Gilberto and I have now met on frequent occasions, and in Australia and in fact around the world, and I am deeply indebted to Gilberto for his friendship and his partnership in what is a really fundamentally important relationship for Australia. Australia and the Philippines are both countries which have shared values and a shared commitment to the rules-based order, an order which is under pressure in our region. And what we have seen over the last few years is a growing body of activity between our two defence forces to assert the rules-based order within the Indo-Pacific. And what this means is that a relationship between our two countries, which has been in existence for decades and which has been underpinned by very strong people-to-people links, great degree of trust, now has a really significant strategic dimension to it, and that very much formed the basis upon which our conversation and our discussions happened today. This meeting is also occurring whilst we are seeing exercise along, and over the coming 2 days, both the Secretary and I will be able to have the privilege of being able to see our servicemen and women work together in this very important exercise. This is the largest exercise in which Australia will participate beyond our shores this year. It's an exercise involving more than 3,500 personnel, possibly Australian and Filipino personnel, but also including US and Canadian forces. There are about 1,600 Australian personnel who will be participating in this. HMAS Brisbane, one of our air warfare destroyers, will be present in this exercise. There will be infantry components as well as Air Force components. We will have F-18s, Growlers, P-8 aircraft. It's a significant contribution from our Air Force, which means that this is an exercise which is occurring across all three services, air, land and sea, as well as components of special forces, components in cyber and components in space. The point of all of that is that it is an increasingly complex exercise, more complex than the first iteration of exercise Alon 2 years ago. And that's really what we are seeking to achieve in exercise Alon this year. And the complexity of the exercise reflects the depth of our relationship, and it reflects the growing trust between us. Today we have, as you've just seen, also signed a statement of intent to pursue a defence cooperation agreement that we will seek to sign this time next year. This will be a really important step forward in terms of our defence relationship. It builds on the 1995 Memorandum of Understanding between our two countries. It will encapsulate the totality of our engagement in defence, but it will include, for example, a commitment to see us having annual Defence Ministers meetings. It will look at how we can do more in terms of coordinating our exercise and operation tempo between our two countries. It will look to how we can do more in terms of pursuing infrastructure development here in the Philippines for the benefit of the armed forces of the Philippines. And to that extent, to that end, we have also, as part of our outcomes, agreed to pursue a defence infrastructure plan. Right now, Australia is pursuing 8 different infrastructure projects across 5 different locations here in the Philippines. And we've agreed now to establish a plan between our two countries which will guide the way in which our infrastructure investment is pursued over the coming years to see greater infrastructure here in the Philippines for the benefit of the armed forces of the Philippines. I really want to thank again Gilberto for your warmth and the way in which you have hosted our delegation over the course of today, and we really look forward to what we're about to witness the weekend with exercise along. Your friendship has been really important for me, and as we work together in what is an increasingly complex and volatile world, the relationship between Australia and the Philippines, the way in which it is being transformed in a strategic sense, the depth of the growing defence relationship is something that is really exciting to be a part of, and I'm so glad to be able to pursue that body of work with you.
Thank you very much to our distinguished guest, Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, also the Minister of Defence of Australia, and members of his delegation. And we are honored once to have Deputy Prime Minister here for the third time. This time to witness the biggest exercise alone so far. And in our talks together, we have seen a document of intent, which places in concrete form the way we want our defense partnership to grow and to progress. There will be a lot of work following this statement of intent. Of course, we want to see a defense cooperation based on statement of intent signed next year, and it is appropriate for such a defense cooperation agreement to be signed next year when the Philippines hosts the ASEAN for next year as the chair. Also, this follows the comprehensive strategic partnership between Australia and the Philippines. We are thankful for the support of Australia for our rights under UNCLOS and international law. We are also very thankful for the support that Australia has been giving the Philippines in terms of resilience, in terms of people-to-people exchanges, in terms of developmental assistance that Australia has been giving us. We also are working together heavily in this region, in the Indo-Pacific region, in order to uphold our shared values of international law amidst increasing shared challenges. And lastly, Deputy Prime Minister comes at a time when we are witnessing the effects of a monsoon. And we expect more to come. And climate change is a reality which we in this area, in the Pacific, cannot ignore because we are the most hit. And we also will enhance cooperation for disaster resilience among other key areas of convergence. Once again, we thank the people of Australia for appreciating the strong people-to-people ties as manifested through their government and our government. And in this way, we also wish to convey to the Deputy Prime Minister our thanks and our hopes for a stronger convergence, a stronger partnership. And we wish not only to be upholders of norms, but enforcers of right conduct and the appropriate way of conducting international relations between countries in the Indo-Pacific and in other areas where our common and shared values may permeate. So thank you very much, DPM Richard, for your visit. And we look forward to seeing meat put into the skeletons that, or the frame that we have. Skeleton is the wrong term. Please don't quote me and don't diss me on the framework that we have put in today. And I'm sure that as our chiefs of defense forces are working together, our people down the line in both the department level and the armed forces level are working very hard. We are very happy, and we need to give a shout out to our people in uniform and their civilian complement for a wonderful job that they have been doing so far. This relationship actually and these statements of intent are also byproducts of the strong working arrangements that we've had down the line. And so it is synergistic in this sense, and we hope to see this bear fruit in the future in a more robust manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now take questions from the media. First is Mikhail Flores from Reuters.
Hi, good afternoon to both Deputy PM Marles and Secretary Teodoro. Right here. Yes. Here.
Oh.
Okay. Shortly before your meeting today, the Philippine Armed Forces last night reported with concern a swarm of Chinese Coast Guard and other vessels around Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. How alarming are these activities in your view? And we get statements from both of you on these recent development, and also grateful if we can get your view on, given these developments, these escalatory activities of China from the South China Sea up to the Southern Pacific. How would you view the U.S., where both of you are key security partners? How reliable is the U.S. nowadays as a security partner in this part of the world? Thank you.
Well, first, the activities of China in any area, whether in the Sierra Madre or any area under their nebulous claims, are a matter not only of concern, but of condemnation, because these are in gross violations of international law. And actually, it is a product of a false narrative. I've even seen some social media posts saying that they are the progenitors of certain areas in the Philippines. So this information is as disgusting as their activities. And we need to stand up to this. And secondly, what was the other question? What was your follow-up question on the
reliability of the U.S. as a trading partner, and particularly in the context of, I understand your first meeting between the two of you was in November 2024, and President Trump was just elected and hasn't assumed office yet. So we're wondering if you can take stock of.
Well, insofar as the Philippines is concerned, based on our recent visit to Washington, and based on the working arrangements on the Squad, the trilateral, the bilateral basis, as you've seen in Balikatan, the security relationship is very strong. What we cannot control are the unilateral activities of China. Hence, the need for deterring China and giving the strong message that their activities will not be tolerated by the international community and not only us, because these are in gross violations of international law. And no matter how they answer, the fact is they are answering for the benefit of their own people and not the world, because the world cannot be presumed to be unthinking so as to accept hook, line, and sinker what they are saying.
So perhaps to start where Gilberto finished, America is absolutely a reliable partner. And we, as we've been talking today about the work that we are doing bilaterally, we instinctively are talking also about how we combine that work with the cooperation that we both have with the United States. And the United States plays a profoundly important role around the world, obviously, but in this region. And the United States is a reliable partner. And from an Australian point of view, our alliance with the United States is as significant today as it has ever been. I'd want to say in response to the first part of your question, what underpins the cooperation between Australia and the Philippines is that we are both countries deeply invested in the rules-based order. And we are both countries which seek to work to uphold that order. And we both acknowledge and are experiencing the pressure that the rules-based order is being placed under here in the Indo-Pacific. Now, we work really closely with the Philippines in terms of asserting the rules-based order in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea. And that's really important for us to jointly do. We understand that in that work, there will be an interaction between defence forces. What we expect in that moment is that those interactions are done in a safe and in a professional manner. And we do have concerns about those standards not having been met in this instance.
Up next, we have Brian Castillo of TV5 Network.
Good afternoon, Secretary DPM. My question is, what role does the Australia-Philippines alliance play in terms of countering or deterring aggressions in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, in a sense, that's what I just gave. Like the work that we do together as two countries which seek to assert the rules-based order is fundamentally important. In the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea applies around the world in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea. And we are both countries which are utterly dedicated to that, and we understand the pressure that the rules-based order is under in this neck of the woods. But I think I want to make this point as well. You know, we as countries of our size, we are invested in the rules-based order because it's what gives us agency. I mean, we are given agency when international disputes are determined by reference to international law and by reference to a set of rules, and when those disputes are determined through negotiation. The alternative is living in a world where disputes are determined by power and might. And that can't be the way in which we move forward as a world in 2025. And that's why we are, as two countries, deeply committed to the rules-based order and to our joint cooperation in asserting that everywhere around the world, but in the West Philippine Sea.
I just need to add a small thing, that we are countries invested in the rules-based order, and we really need international law to have some parity so that might does not mean right. And we are also used to negotiating in good faith and not with insincerity. And as I've said, much as China professes to want dialogue and negotiation, there is a deficit of trust that they need to overcome. And with these activities that have been happening, that deficit has widened more than lessened.
We now call on Liam Bartlett of Channel 7 News Australia.
Gentlemen, thank you. Minister Marles, you're a hard man to track down. I've had to come all the way to the Philippines to ask you a question about accountability. But I'll give it a go. When will you finally admit that the Australian Defence Force is woefully under-equipped thanks to your current budgetary spend?
Well, thank you for the question, and really happy to answer that question anywhere, including very much in Australia. And of course, I've answered questions of that kind frequently in Australia, but obviously,
But nothing's changed.
But I completely reject the assertion of the question. I mean, when we came to government, we inherited a lot of challenges associated with our Defence Force. We engaged in the biggest root and branch review of our strategic circumstances, of the state of our Defence Force, of the kind of Defence Force that we need to build.
But there's been multiple reviews, Minister, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it started with you or with your government. I think it's fair to say it's been through successive governments. But what are you doing now today to make it better and fix it? Because this is all very nice. This is fantastic shop window, but you don't want to be known as Minister for Show. To it.
Well, really happy to answer, and you know, we there is significant steps that we have taken, and if I can complete what I just said, when we went through the Defence Strategic Review, we worked out what sort of defence force we need to build in order to meet the strategic challenge that we face. Now, what that has resulted in is two things. One, the unprecedented level of reprioritization of the existing defence spend, so that we are focused upon building a defence force which has the capacity to project. And the second thing that it's done is seen the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australian history. Now, that's the fact. I get that.
That's voodoo mathematics.
It's not voodoo.
Well, you're not taking into account inflation or the rising weaponry or the Australian dollar's performance against the greenback. All of those things have eaten into that budget. All of them are more expensive.
Well, obviously, if you want to make a speech, you can do that. But the fact of the matter is, when you actually look at what we have done, we have taken into account all of the factors that you have just described, and it has given rise, even with all of that, to the single biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history. Now, that doesn't fit whatever narrative you're trying to put to air, but that is in fact.
But there's no narrative. There's no narrative.
Liam, excuse me. Let's give the floor to others also to ask questions.
That is in fact what has occurred, and the result of that is that we are seeing a surface combatant in terms of our fleet being brought into service 5 years quicker than what we inherited when we came to office. We are now seeing longer range missiles and missile manufacturing happening in Australia way ahead of what we inherited, such that manufacturing is commencing this year. We're seeing significant steps being taken down the path of Australia acquiring a long-range submarine capability under the banner of AUKUS with powered submarine capability. We are seeing a much more amphibious army. We are seeing unprecedented investments in our northern bases, and I could keep going. In fact, all of these are happening, and it is about meeting the strategic moment that we face.
Thank you very much. The last question will come from Ron Calunzod of Teodoro News.
Good afternoon. Thank you for providing us a picture of how the Philippines and Australia would step up the two countries' defense cooperation by citing the Envision Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement by next year. I'd just like to ask, is this going to be similar to the Philippines-US EDCA? Will this be a treaty or
No.
an executive agreement?
No. It will not. It will not be like the EDCA, definitely. We will work on the appropriate arrangements as our forces find out what they need. EDCA is an offshoot of a mutual defense treaty and not a visiting forces agreement. So that is a fundamental difference. So we will work out the appropriate arrangements, but we need, in order to operationalize the status of visiting forces agreement with Australia, more facilities to service them for increased tempo of joint exercises, joint activities.
There was a mention of infrastructure plans. Can you tell us?
Pardon me?
Infrastructure plans.
We cannot tell you.
Okay. Which area, sir?
We cannot tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Only China will benefit if we tell you.
Well, that concludes our joint press conference this afternoon. We'd like to thank everyone from the media for coming, and we will now have a final photo op for our videographers and photographers with our two ministers.